Hi all, welcome to tips and tricks for managing overstock replenishment from a single warehouse. My name is Jeremy Dobish. I'm a senior business consultant with Bennett Solutions with a focus on manufacturing and inventory management. Got 13 years of manufacturing for aerospace and nuclear industry with a focus on complex machining, wire EDM, quality, inventory management. We specialized on a lot of space and nuclear parts. I have an MBA from the University of Denver with a focus on operational management and small business entrepreneurship. I am intimately familiar with purchasing, production, inventory management, quality, engineering controls that a lot of the complex manufacturers are using, as well as some of the not so complex manufacturers. I was responsible for writing and maintaining our quality management system for the AS9100 and the ISO 9001 requirements. And I spent a lot of the time throughout my history at my previous company working to streamline the operations and make sure that we could identify what was more efficient. While I was there, we were purchased 3 times and had 4 ERP implementations, my apologies. I ended up becoming the ERP specialist and worked closely with developers to design our own systems for quality management and inventory control. When I started working with acuMatica, it's been about 3 years at this point, I realized very quickly that there's a lot of opportunities to use generic inquiries in a sense that we can streamline and improve the operations. While working with clients that are just getting into warehouse, I identified that there's some areas of improvement that we can use when it comes to using the WMS and overstock replenishment. Quick little agenda overview here. We're going to be discussing the current state of how acuMatica warehousing is set up. Then we'll be reviewing some of the issues that are often identified. From there, we're going to go on to a few custom solutions that we've built, either myself or members of the PC Bennett team. And then we'll follow up with answering any questions. And feel free to hop into the chat, post any questions. We are monitoring those. There is a poll that's going to pop up in a couple of minutes, so feel free to enter that information as well. acuMatica warehouse setup. Standard acuMatica will allow for single-step transfers using the WMS system, but it does not allow for a 2-step transfer to be utilized through the mobile devices, the scan and transfer operations. Many clients, especially in manufacturing and distribution, will need to either separate inventory for accounting for production requirements, purchasing in bulk, or account for just general overstock management. They want to make sure that they want to limit their operations for where they're picking from. They only want their pickers to go to one location, and having multiple warehouse locations, that doesn't work for them, or multiple warehouses, because they want to do everything with that WMS scanner. Also, just saving clicks, making things easier. It's the end goal for everybody. That's our jobs as consultants, is to go in and make sure that we are helping with the operations and with streamlining. So one of the standards, as we talked about, is people want to pull from a particular area. They don't want to have to worry about somebody opening up a box, pulling from that box, leaving 5 of 100 items not in a box, so that when you have to do a cycle count, you can't streamline that operation. So, and then also with standard acuMatica having different applications, different warehouses, you can apply different transfer parameters, and we can set safety stock levels with a transfer replenishment method, but we can't do that within location. We can only do that within a separate warehouse. So obviously, if you're trying to use a WMS, you want to use a one-step transfer because that's all that we are limited to, and we don't want to have to worry about going back to a computer, doing a two-step transfer, generating those transfers and managing all those transfers, because then everything ends up in transit when undoubtedly somebody forgets to complete that transfer. Our solution is a custom solution. There are some limitations to this, and that solution might not be able to be utilized by everybody. Obviously, everybody has their own business, their own requirements, their own understanding of how they want to use WMS. This solution will not be able to be utilized by everyone because of if people are using MRP and item replenishment. As you may or may not be aware, acuMatica allows us to utilize reorder point or safety stock to generate requirements for MRP. If we're strictly using MRP, then we can set the preferences to look at reorder point. If we're using a combination of item replenishment based off the reorder points and the min-max and MRP, then we might run into some issues using this custom solution that I'm going to be showing, so that we can, just so you're aware of that. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to be showing the MRP based on reorder point and the safety stock for our overstock summaries. So I'm going to hop over into acuMatica. I've got a demo site set up over there. We're going to review some of the MRP preferences. We're going to look at the item setup. We're going to review a couple of the generic inquiries, and then look at the custom solutions, walk through the transfer, scan and transfer process through the WMS, and review those results. All right. That being said, I'm going to hop over into acuMatica here. Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen now. So we are going to go into MRP, and we are going to look at the MRP preferences. As you can see within that stocking method, we have reorder point or safety stock. For these purposes, we are going to be utilizing reorder point for that. Okay. From there, we're going to look at an inventory item under stock items. And we're going to pick a window today. So standard acuMatica functionality, we do have replenishment classes. That is also another comment that I'm going to make here about the setup that we are using. I am limiting only to purchase replenishment class for the purposes of cleaning up the data, so that we aren't getting duplicates and we aren't having to manage multiple replenishment classes. So within the parameters, we are going to have a source, we're going to have a min-max, and we are going to be utilizing the safety stock as our items for how we're going to identify if there is overstock available in those locations, as well as if we are meeting our demand. One of the other limitations that we've seen within this stock item screen is there's a lot of information that can be seen, but there's also a lot of information that cannot be seen. As we're looking at replenishment parameters, they are not showing up on the standard stock items. So one of the things that we've done is we have built sort of an all item detail inquiry. This allows us to have multiple views as far as the replenishment parameters. It allows us to identify any overrides, any safety stocks, reorder points for those items. And I also have the ability to go in and utilize my flyouts to adjust those items on the fly at this moment. Also within this inquiry, I have provided the action to update and update all on a few items. So if we did want to have safety stocks or reorder points by item class, we can do that on this screen without having to do an import scenario. So we've talked a little bit about some of the issues and some of the setup. One of the things that I wanted to identify when we were looking, people want to be able to see what was in their warehouse locations, and they wanted to be able to see where their overstock was, what their overstock quantities were. The first iteration of this was to look at the storage details by warehouse. And essentially what we did is I expanded out all of the inventory locations and summarized based upon that inventory location. This way you can look at item classes, we can filter, there's all sorts of iterations that we can do. And then by adding some side panels, you can verify that the inventory summary will provide you with those locations and those quantities. Stock item details is going to give you that information at the stock item level. And the allocation details will provide you with some of that information that's generally looked at by a lot of these clients looking to manage their inventory. So from here, from this inventory by warehouse location, I said there has to be a better way to do some consolidation, and there has to be a way that we can identify based upon pick locations if we have the item in the pick location versus a consolidated overstock location. So, introducing the overstock summary report. Based upon the locations A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, B1, B2, overstock, etc., I've written a formula to calculate and identify the sum in each of these group locations. So we have a pick location and we have an overstock location. We then added some side panels and color coding so that I can verify that these numbers are correct based upon the item identified. So in the case of this window, you can see that I have 101 in my pick location based upon the B1, and I have 898 in my B2, in my B3, and 1 in my B2 location, summing up to 899. I also have the replenishment number, or my safety stock number, of 100. If we come down to the safety stock, to the stock items, we can look and we can confirm that within that purchase replenishment, we have a safety stock of 100. Are there any questions at this point? Any questions or comments? All right, nothing yet. Perfect. Okay, feel free to ask any questions or post any comments into the chat, and we will get to them as needed. Okay. So looking at safety stock and looking at available overstock and the pick location, came up with a couple of different inquiries and filters so that we can manage this information from here. So as you can see, we have nothing in the pick location here. We do have overstock available. This is another filter that I have come up with that is essentially saying there is inventory available in this overstock, and we can look at that information. So relatively simple filters based upon those inquiries. One of the things that we did have to come across was, as a subquery for these pick locations and overstock locations, Acumatica doesn't allow us to do a subquery within a subquery. So we did have to get around that by converting some information into strings, utilizing the results here, and converting it into a formula with a string and a text evaluation so that we could identify and color code in a way that would make sense and have it visible. Okay. So, like I said, we did have to get a little bit creative with some of these queries. If you're interested in how we do that, feel free to ask away, and I can go into the details. I'm going to try and keep it pretty high level. The third part of this was to add in those inventory summaries, right? Initially, it was all just pulled from the information here in the inquiry. Having the ability to have a side panel gives us a little bit more of a flyout, as I mentioned, so that we can identify that information. Next step was to create a dashboard specific for this inquiry. This is going to give us information tied back to that general inquiry, so we can identify things based upon our pick location. Right? If there's nothing in this pick location, it's going to pull to that filter. If there's items to be pulled from Overstock, it's going to pull, saying that we do have the available quantities on the Overstock. Here we have the individual items, and here we have the individual items in a different graph. We do have links to some of those inquiries. Didn't want to pull up all of the information for all of those items every time we loaded the page, but we do have the links for those page. And then we do have the all records report filtered upon by anything with a replenishment here for those Overstock requirements. So from a very top level, you can have this on a screen, you can have this on the mobile device. It is pushed to that mobile device. We can identify, hey, we don't have any of these things here. This is a particular item that we have nothing in our pick location and nothing in our, so we would need to purchase this because we do not have any available. So a lot of different opportunities of things that we can do with these. This one here, the pick location above safety stock, is essentially just an indicator that things are good. Some people like to go in and, they're doing regular cycle counts, and they would be able to utilize this and say, hey, I don't need to worry about these items, or I want to go cycle count these items because of what we have in stock. We do have a pick location, and it's above our replenishment parameter. Okay. So that being said, we're going to hop over into the scan and transfer. And could be doing this on the mobile device, but I'm going to do it on the screen just to keep things a little bit more streamlined here. So in the case of the Overstock summary, right, we have nothing in the pick location. This particular item, you can see we have 1,800 in our Overstock. They're all coming from the B5 warehouse. And I want to move them to a B1 location so that they show up in my pick location. And I'm going to set my quantity to be 50, and then I'm going to release this. Hey, 6. So now we'll come back over here. We will refresh. And as you can see, that item fell off, disappeared, because we do have it in our pick location. So this was that item here. Where was it? Right down here. And now that pick location, we have 50 in B1, and we were able to do that with a single step transfer through the WMS system. One of the things that I have done for a couple of clients is connect this inquiry to a business event so that it can identify and send out notifications, as well as posted this to the mobile device so that we can show that, look at this screen and the dashboards on the mobile device, so the warehouse staff can actually take care of that, say, hey, here's where we have to go, and they can go look at that. So relatively simple operation within the WMS, saves a lot of clicks, saves a lot of time, and has made a pretty significant difference for a lot of the folks that are trying to manage with a single warehouse or multiple racks. They might have a rack with the lower level is for picking, the upper levels are for overstock, or some clients have an overstock wall where everything that doesn't fit ends up on that overstock wall. Being able to have that location, it's a non-sellable area, so the picking order is not being directed to go over and pick off of that wall. So a lot of different opportunities that we have using a situation like this. Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay.
Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Amy.
How's it going? Great session.
Thank you.
So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A tab or the chat tab for us. And remember to take that poll that's in there as well, so we can Jerry can gather some feedback. So it's been very quiet in sessions sometimes, Jeremy. No questions.
Nope, totally understand. And I know that there's a lot of different sessions going on, and a lot of people are bouncing around back and forth between multiple sessions. So definitely glad to be here, and glad to be presenting, and hopefully some folks have learned some fun tips and tricks.
Definitely.
Okay. All right.
Got some great comments.
Santiago, I was expecting a little more heckling from you. And Jenny, the side panels have been huge for a lot of our clients, just being able to get to and from the information without having to go back and forth and having multiple tabs open, and being able to connect those is really, really beneficial for them, especially from the standpoint of if they're coming new to an ERP system and having to deal with a new software, there's a lot less bouncing back and forth. So thank you for the comment. All right. Well, thank you all for your time.
And thank you for presenting, Jeremy.
Of
Appreciate
course.
it.
Yeah. Take care.